New developments tonight in the story of a 27-year-old man who confessed to raping a 10-year-old in Ohio and then went across state lines to Indiana to get an abortion. It's a stunning story that was questioned by many because it was initially hard to verify. And some in the far-right media even mocked it because it seemed too perfect to be true. But look, I was initially skeptical as well. But now that it seems it's been confirmed, there are a number of troubling developments tonight. Now, you may have heard about this story from various pro-choice activists or even President Biden, at least initially. It fit with the narrative of needing to cross state lines because it very well may have been illegal for the girl to get an abortion in Ohio, and to avoid any legal questions, she was taken to neighboring Indiana where there was no question it was legal. But initially, the Washington Post fact-checker questioned the story, and many decided to presume that the story was made up out of whole cloth. Fox News host Jesse Waters, for instance, spent 17 minutes picking the story apart on Monday night.
So Primetime decided to investigate this alleged child rape. But we quickly found out that authorities in Ohio haven't even begun a criminal investigation into the rape. This doesn't make any sense. No one reported this child rape to law enforcement?
But to Waters' credit, he spoke with Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost, who cast more doubt on it as the chief law enforcement officer in the state.
Let's turn to Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost. So, Dave, have you had anybody come to you in your state to say we're looking into this? A police report was filed?
Not a whisper. And we work closely with we have a decentralized law enforcement system in Ohio. But we have regular contact with prosecutors and local police and sheriffs. Not a whisper anywhere.
Yost went even further in an interview with USA Today. He said, quote, "I know the cops and prosecutors in this state. There's not one of them that wouldn't be turning over every rock looking for this guy, and they would have charged him. I'm not saying it could not have happened. What I'm saying to you is there is not a damn scintilla of evidence." But as it turned out, the case was very real. On Wednesday, a reporter for the Columbus Dispatch learned that 27-year-old Gershon Fuentes, an undocumented immigrant from Guatemala, had been arrested the day before and charged with raping the 10-year-old girl. Police say Fuentes confessed to raping her at least twice. Now, Attorney General Yost has pleaded ignorance, but a review of the timeline at the least shows he ought to have known better. According to the official complaint, the rape occurred on May 12th. Here's the key date. On June 22nd, Columbus police say the girl's mother reported the rape and pregnancy to Franklin County Children's Services. That organization notified law enforcement. So at that point, there was a record in the Ohio system of this case. On June 30th, the victim had an abortion in Indiana, according to the OBGYN who performed the procedure. On July 6th, the victim identified Fuentes as her assailant, and law enforcement obtained the victim's DNA. Now, this is 5 days before the AG went on TV and said there was no investigation. And on July 12th, a search warrant was executed to collect DNA from Fuentes, and Fuentes allegedly confessed to the crime. Now, this timeline leaves major egg on the face of the Ohio Attorney General, who suggested there was no investigation, and it turns out there was way more than a scintilla of evidence. It just seems that the AG didn't know about the investigation, which isn't really his fault because local law enforcement isn't his job. But the problem is he was acting as if, of course, he would know about it. Yost's counterpart next door, Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita, also looked to score political points out of this tragedy. But rather than just focus on the perpetrator in the case and legitimate questions about how and why he was in this country at all, he turned his ire on the OBGYN who performed the abortion, Dr. Caitlin Bernard. As part of Jesse Waters' cleanup effort for the mess he created on Monday, he had the Indiana AG on his show last night to voice his outrage at the doctor.
We have this abortion activist acting as a doctor with a history of failing to report. So we're gathering the information, we're gathering the evidence as we speak, and we're going to fight this to the end. including looking at her licensure if she failed to report. And in Indiana, it's a crime to not report, to intentionally not report.
Rather than focusing on the 10-year-old victim in this case, or even focusing exclusively on the man who was arrested, he's choosing to focus on the doctor? And what's more, new reporting tonight suggests Dr. Bernard apparently played it totally by the book. Next, our affiliate WXIN in Indiana obtained a document showing Bernard reported the abortion on July 2nd, 2 days after the procedure. Indiana law requires the Department of Child Services and the Indiana Department of Health to be notified within 3 days after the procedure is performed. Look, I don't care what you think about the abortion debate. It is currently legal in the state of Indiana for a 10-year-old rape victim to get an abortion. As I said, I was skeptical about this story at the outset, but some in the media went further than just asking questions. Some said it was made up. But that's almost par for the course these days in the politicized media, on both sides. I'm really disappointed in the attorneys general of both Ohio and Indiana for using this horrible incident to try to score political points and then getting burned. Both were just wrong. First, wrong that there was no incident, and then wrong to be pointing fingers at the doctor, who it sure seems like was in full compliance with the law. Joining us now is Jeff Modisett. He's the former Attorney General of Indiana. He now practices law in California and serves as an adjunct professor at UCLA. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. So first, let me ask you to break down the law for us. What exactly can the Attorney General of Indiana, the position you used to hold here, do? What kind of power does he have to potentially bring charges or an investigation with regard to the doctor?
Well, thank you, Dan. Actually, in addition to being Attorney General, I was the Indianapolis District Attorney. And it's the district attorneys in Indiana who have the power to bring criminal cases. The Attorney General's authority in the criminal area is very limited. It has to do with criminal appeals and the like. So when the Attorney General, Rokita, gets involved in a case like this, even he admits that it's up to the local district attorney to make that decision, whether to prosecute. He does have some jurisdiction, though. He does have jurisdiction over licensing, things of that nature. He's the one who can investigate and bring a complaint in front of the Medical Licensing Board, but that's a different issue from prosecuting the doctor criminally.
Right, because there was talk of potentially prosecuting the doctor. What is the law in Indiana with regard to reporting? Is it a criminal offense for a doctor not to report in an incident like this within 3 days?
There are variations, different strata of penalties that are involved here. So most of them are infractions or misdemeanors. There is a particular egregious one that has to do with intentionally keeping the abortion concealed and not reporting it, knowing that you had that duty. That would be could rise to the level of felony. But for the most part, we're talking about misdemeanors.
So let me ask you, in your role as having been an attorney general, I'm going to ask you to sort of move over to neighboring Ohio for a moment. The fact that the Ohio attorney general so confidently was going public, stating that he knows, he would know if there was an investigation. I was stunned even at the time I heard it, that he was saying that. Why would the attorney general know about every local investigation that's going on around the state?
Well, the answer, as you are implying, is that you can't. And I think it's one of the dangers of, district attorneys and attorneys general. They are political people in addition to being law enforcement officers. So it's understandable that they like to get out in front of the cameras. And this obviously was a very, very high profile situation. But if you're going to do it, if you're going to play with fire, you better make sure you got every one of your facts correct. But you are absolutely right. Both in Ohio and in Indiana, these sorts of investigations, criminal investigations, are left up to local police and local district attorneys. And even in Indianapolis, all of state government, if it's a criminal matter, it's being handled by the district attorney there in Indianapolis, not by the attorney general.
So does the attorney general have the power to tell the Indianapolis prosecutor, you must investigate this?
No.
Right.
That's the quick answer. And I think that Attorney General Rokita would admit as much, that it's up to the district attorney, his name's Ryan Myers, whether or not he would pursue an investigation. But all Attorney General Rokita can do is within his particular ambit, and that has to do with the licensing of the doctor and whether or not there may or may not have been a reporting violation. It's within his right to pursue that part of the investigation, even if he's off on a tangent. It is his right to do that, but not in the criminal sense.
And if she reported this, as it seems she did, 2 days later, is there anything else to potentially investigate on his part about the doctor?
Yeah, I've looked into that. Obviously, there are more facts to be known, but the answer at this point would appear to be no. And the fact that this has already been reported to the Ohio police, even before the abortion took place, there is an exception in Indiana that you don't have to report if you already have a reasonable belief that it's already been reported. So it'll be interesting to see what Attorney General Rokita ends up with after this so-called investigation.
All right. Well, this is exactly what we needed here. We needed a fact check here, and Jeff Modisette has provided it for us. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.